Hey there, and welcome to the daily podcast where wisdom smacks us with kisses or love taps. I'm MichelleSpiva, a wisdom strengthening coach, your host, and practical priestess of wisdom. Mwah. Join us daily to gain wisdom and mental strength as we tackle innovative thinking, address emotional and behavioral life traps, and yes, provide you with some practical how to's to wrap it all up. So settle in or crank up the speed 2x, whatever gets your mental processes firing as we dive in. Stay tuned. Yay! Okay, there must be something wrong because I clearly applied for labor and delivery. Why does it say dialysis and oncology on here? My application was perfect. Exactly. It's time that you be tried and tested. Ain't this some Hey, this is Michelle Spiva, your practical priestess of wisdom, and I want to welcome you to today's podcast of Wisdom Smack. Mwah. Stick with me because I want to know, have you cycled yet? It'll make sense on the flip. I'll see you then. All right, you made it. You came and stuck with me today. It's going to be good, I promise. So, today we're going to be talking about the whole concept of cycling. And I'm just going to tell you, maybe you've already been through this and understand it on this type of level. But if not, please let this do a powerful work on you because wisdom is here showing up today with a powerful wisdom smack. So, when I ask you, have you cycled yet? That is a question that is asked of a lot of people when they are on the cusp of doing something great. And I'm not going to get to that part just yet. Just put a pin in that or put that in the parking lot, and then we're going to work up to it. And it'll make sense when I get to that point of that question that you're asked. Have you cycled yet? Okay. So let's start from the beginning. So there are going to be many things that we do in this lifetime, and hopefully we will live a life that is got a wide variety of experiences. Yeah, some good, some bad, some up, some down, some straightforward to a goal, and some that are just circles, turning around in circles. And when I talk about a cycle, I want to first and foremost just give you a scope of what we're talking about. So, a cycle is going to be one rotation to complete something. You can think of it as a goal, you can think of it as a situation or a circumstance, you can think of it as a journey or even as a trip. But it is going to have a definitive start point and an end point. Okay. And when I'm talking about this have you cycled yet portion, it is usually going to contain a component of a success and a failure, or many successes and failures. And so just keep that in the back of your mind. So now let's talk about now that we know that a cycle really is a circle. And no, I'm not talking about the art of cycling. I am not talking about the sport of cycling. And I'm definitely not talking about Peloton. So let's get back into it. All right. So this is the thing that I like about cycles is that when you're in one, you gain a lot of wisdom through that process that you would have never been able to access. Isn't it odd that people who have the greatest sense of self awareness, sense of self themselves, self identity, wisdom, insight, cunning, shrewdness, whatever, isn't it something that they usually have a life that is readily observable as one that has not been easy? A lot of times, people who have gone through some things, they wear it on their expressions and it flavors their words. Well, actually, it makes their words audition to come out of their mouths because they have such a different look on things where their perspective has been influenced and impacted by these cycles of life. All right. And so I'm going to say this. If you if you have experienced or if you are experiencing a fear of failing at something, if you're experiencing loss, or even possible humiliation of losing what you have obtained, you possibly are in a cycle right now. And with these cycles, it's almost like you feel like the heavens giveth and the heavens taketh away, because it almost feels capricious in how you'll have a good success and then it's like another shoe drops and boom, you lose it all. And it's not necessarily because you did anything really stupid. Of course, there are always going to be some times when you can go back and look at it and learn, but there are a lot of things at work that could cause something to go wrong. I have talked to a lot of people in the writing realm who have been blessed to have a very successful series and it take off. And others have tried to replicate what they do, and it looks like they came out of nowhere. And that's not the truth. It really isn't. Not in the ones that I've had experience with. And we make note of nobody looks at all of the cycles we went through before we had a hit something. No one wants to look at how hard it is after the hit series. No one wants to realize the pressure that you have to deal with because of the weight of expectation for people looking and waiting for you to create thunderous magic over and over again at will. And yes, we have we have this urge and this desire to do that because that's part of our jobs as storytellers and plus to pay the bills. But then we also have to put it in context so it doesn't drive us crazy. And so I want to come to you today and give you a wisdom smack about this whole cycling thing and how to help you identify what a cycle is for yourself and help you to get a better understanding of how you can make it really work for you. Because so many dear ones out there are going through their cycles and they think it's just something wrong with them when they don't realize that this is a rite of passage. Actually, this is the rite of passage before you get initiated into a new level of life that you're going to go into. Because if you don't cycle here, you can't make it there. And there are so many times that I've looked back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I set this cycle up because of the desires of my heart that I had and the things I wanted to achieve. And the only way to achieve these things was to go through this particularly trying cycle. So I'm going to say this, that when you are in the midst of a cycle, the weird thing about most cycles is that you will you will struggle. Yes, you will downright struggle and then you will finally get your success. And then you will lose it all. I know it sounds crazy, but you will. And not only that, you will run the risk of being humiliated by people in the know of your success finally realizing that you've lost it all. But I want you to know that you are in excellent company over and over again. Great figures of the past, contemporaries, will tell you over and over again that time when they lost it all, that time when they were back against the wall, that time when no one wanted to look at them for fear that their bad luck would rub off on them, that like they were some contagious superbug. But you'll notice that most people who live in the realm of the elites all have at least one cycle under their belt. Okay. And so this is that insider knowledge that people who achieve a lot take for granted that a lot of people know, and that I find a lot of times they just downright have a curse of knowledge because it becomes norm to them. Even they even have the little sayings. You know them. You win some, you lose some. They might even say things like, I was raked over the coals to get that one. And they just take it in stride because whether they can articulate it in this way or not, they do understand that there's a price to be paid in this life for you getting to oscillate and live on a certain level, a certain frequency with a certain amount of energy that you can maintain without going cuckoo. Yeah. Um, in the Black experience, we have this saying. It's called new level, new devil, meaning that you when you get up to a new level, it doesn't mean that your worries go away. It doesn't mean that your problems disappear. It just means that you just got them upgraded. and that now you got to compete with a new devil. If we're looking at this contemporarily, it would be like new level, new boss master or boss monster if you're talking about gaming, or if you're talking about the rap community and Diddy in particular, more money, more problems. It's all in the same thing. This is what we talk about when we talk about cycling. All right, so let's get on to the good. And in previous podcasts, I have mentioned order and chaos most recently. And prior to that, I've also talked about the two pillars, the pillar of severity and the pillar of mercy. But those pillars are also known as punishment and power. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So let's break this down. So if you're like, oh my gosh, that's what's happening to me. I was going fine, and now no matter how hard I work, no matter how hard I try, it seems like nothing. I can't catch a break. It seems like I'm losing all the time, and I'm losing ground, and I'm fearful because I see, that this is not going to end well, and I'm fighting it with all I can. And you know what? In most cases, you are supposed to fight it with all you can, because in that fight, you're developing some powerful skills and experiences. You're developing character traits that can't be borrowed or bought. You are beginning to have insight and perception that the average person will never know. Because in the midst of all of this cycling, all of this energy, and all of these high emotions, there is power, very detailed, intricate patterns of promise that are etched into your very essence and your very being that you can't outsource to anybody. You can't share it with anybody. I like to watch American Ninja Warrior and some of these others when I look at people going through these obstacle courses, and you can see it written on their faces when they either lock into the fact that this is just a cycle that they have to get through, or they lock into I don't have anything else to give, I'm gassed out. I love watching the physicality of it, but more so I love watching the micro expressions on their faces that are windows to the soul of what they are enduring inside as they go through. And there are some that have so much experience, and they go to the course and they leave everybody in shock because some simple, like I said, the capricious forces out there that do what they will when they will, um, they'll get knocked off the course before they even get a chance to get going, and everybody's in shock like, I thought they were going to win it all. And then you have some people that are scrappy that go through the first time and they make it to the end, and they're jumping around and they're happy and they're successful, and you can tell that they haven't cycled much of anything yet because they have this exuberant energy about them. Yeah, I'm the best. I did it. I did it. And I'm like, okay, they don't understand gravity is real. What goes up must come down. And I'm not trying to say that I'm over here grizzled and bitter. But I will say that when you start cycling, it puts a humility and a groundedness to you, because you start to learn the patterns. Yep, there we go again with that word patterns. You start to learn the patterns and start to understand the signs and the code and the archetypes that are all around for what you're going through. And instead of focusing on the highs you get for the successes, you learn to treat success and failure the same, that they are necessary in your life, because the pillars of severity, uh, or AKA punishment, and mercy, AKA power, are always there on either side of you. And it is you in the middle that makes the most of what you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you grow into as you're cycling and why it's so important. And I've talked about this in other podcasts, but not in this context. So today we're going to talk a little bit about order and chaos from the standpoint of what happens when you are in the midst of a cycle. Okay. So real quick recap. Orderly, if you will, is going to be that which is process driven, understandable, obvious, simple, step by step, recipe, hypotheses that have been proven. A plus B does equal C. Uh, Cause and effect, action, reaction. You see that it just makes sense. That's going to be order. And order is that part of the cycle that is a mount up to a goal, to a success. You see, one of the things that I have found that I do a lot of when I'm working with clients is trying to help them understand what's on the other side of the mountaintop. That there is another side to the mountain of that success goal that you're going for. And I did a podcast called You've Secured the Bag, Now What? And to secure the bag means that you've gotten your goal, you've gotten your payoff or whatever. And no one ever wants to look on the other side of now what? They never want to understand that what goes up must come back down. And they never want to understand that it's the going down part that's the scary part. Because going down, you can fall and you can go splat and you might not ever recover from that fall. And so, in understanding these cycles, when you can figure out that first and foremost, you're in a cycle, you will know because you'll start to see these telltale signs of order working like a machine, and that you just keep doing and you keep going and you keep seeing acceleration and you keep seeing growth and you keep seeing things that are working the way they're supposed to be. Yeah, you're on the ordered side of things. But if you listen to my podcast where I talked about embracing the chaos, you'll know that order's terminal point, order's destination point always leads to chaos. And the reason why is because chaos is where newness, birth, and growth happen. You see, order is that process. It is what happens after you have worked out stuff so that you can get ready to do something. So order is the stuff that happens after you've put things into their proper places and gotten everything prepared and now you're working out the plan. And I don't know why, especially for me, that it took me a while to realize this whole cycling thing and the fact that there is order and chaos in every cycle. It just didn't make any sense to me. But we learn and we grow. And so, like I said, with the order, it's process. It's where things make sense. It's where if you seek, you'll find. It's where if you do the time, if you do the analysis, if you open your eyes, if you gather stuff, it'll start to make sense to you. That's order. But oh boy, chaos. Chaos is that disruptive energy that is destruction. It is untrackable. It's volatile, full of power, full of all of the things that we fear that go bump in the night. It is also that time of magic, mystical, whimsy. It is that time of excitement because of the unexpected. And it is also that time that we usually associate with failure and with loss. Because, like I said, chaos is destruction. Oh, yes. So, I, as a business owner, have had much failure in my life, much success. And I had to finally realize that things don't bother me like they used to. And when I looked back, I was like, oh my God, it's because I've had so many cycles. And that I know what goes up must come down. And I know that things will eventually work out, especially if I'm in a chaotic situation. And as you grow older in these cycles, you start picking up more things. Remember, I talked about those character traits? And the character traits of going through cycles and going through the chaotic side is you start learning that chaos is handled based on how you approach it. And so you can handle chaos by it being proactive on you, or you can handle chaos by you being proactive on it. And what I mean by that is this. So, say for instance, you're like, Michelle, I think this makes sense. And I think I understand that I'm in some kind of cycle because stuff that used to work doesn't work anymore. And I think I might be in the cycle because all of my efforts are not changing things and I'm still going in the direction of descent. I'm going into where I'm going to lose it all. Things are not working out. No matter how hard I try, it just hits me in the face. Yep, you are probably firmly ensconced into the land of chaos. And let me just help you out real quick. If you're already in chaos and you've been trying to figure it out and you're like, Michelle, I'm in chaos. What you want to first and foremost do is find your stability at all costs. And when I say find your stability, I want you to stop just letting things happen to you in chaos. And I know it's hard to say. I know it is because it's just hard. I've talked about one of the quotes that I really liked from Diamond Doris, the jewelry thief's memoir, and she talked about her father. And she said when he lost his coal miner's job, she said he took to his bed, and she said he was at home in bed waiting for something right to happen in life. And that's the stance that a lot of people find themselves when they are unwittingly in the midst of chaos, and chaos is working on them instead of them working on chaos. And so if you find that you're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do." And so you're just letting stuff happen to you. You're hiding, you're scared, you're ostrich with your head in the sand. What you want to do is find your stability first. And in order to find your stability, how you do that is you act. You get up and you do something. You just do something proactively. It does not even have to make sense, but the fact that you do something despite the fears you have. Because remember when we talked about the cycle and we talked about how the cycle will have fears, it will have loss, it might even have possible humiliation, but you have to act. Do something proactively that will help you to find your stability in the midst of the chaos. Now, if you say, "Well, I'm not there yet, but I see it coming," you can proactively work on the chaos when it hits. And what you can do is it's called a renovation. And so to renovate means to take what you have and turn it into new. Now, that's an advanced way of doing it. And a lot of people who are familiar with the cycling process know how to do this to the point where they even control their cycles. We talked about that on the Embracing Chaos podcast, where we talked about how if you don't want to fall so far, there are things you can do to control the descent on that other side of the mountain after you've gotten a goal. And it's S curves and all that. And we could talk about that, but just go back and check that podcast because I have only a few more minutes to talk about the rest of this that I want to talk to you about. All right. So, in this order and chaos, when you experience it, you'll know because it will be a lot of times where it's extremes. So there will be extreme success. I mean, you will be smiling from ear to ear. You will have obtained things that you always wanted to obtain. And when I say this success will make people look at you with respect or envy. But I'm talking about that kind of success. It might be award generating success or whatever it may be. But there is going to be a success that is in no way mediocre. But then also understand that there will be a failure. It's like waiting on that second shoe to drop. And I know you're like, "No, Michelle, no, no, no." And hey, good for you. But I will say, in this life, you will have troubles. Oh, yes, you will. And that's not a quote from me. You'll know where it comes from if you know. Anyway, so you have to understand that if you are exposed to order, the only place order can go is back to chaos. And chaos brings about newness and it sets the cycle over. So most people think that order is the land you always want to be in, but they don't realize that order is the byproduct of chaos. That before there was order, there was chaos. And order has a termination point back to chaos. And so that should let you know that, yes, you guessed it. That's a cycle. You see how we did that? Okay. So moving on from there, here's another thing that you have to deal with when you are going through your cycles. If you're going to make the best of them, learn from them and be able to get the best benefit. Because I figure if you're going to suffer, don't just suffer for the sake of suffering. If you're going to suffer, suffer and get those golden tickets to new places and new accomplishments that you would not have been able to have gotten if you hadn't gone through this. And so that is the punishment and the power side. Now, when we talk about punishment or that pillar of severity in our lives, you know, uh, punishment has a way of making you mindful and making you respectful. But if you're not careful, it can also make you regretful. You see, when we go through these cycles, especially when we get to the point where we're starting to enter into the cycle of destruction, where everything that we were familiar with and comfortable with starts to self destruct, tear up, not work right, and all of that kind of stuff, we get mindful because it makes us more aware. We get an increased awareness of ourselves, our lives, our situations, and the environment. Think about it. You can have a cycle on anything. Your appliances have a cycle. You get them, you try to, they start working and it's great, but you don't necessarily know all the little tricks and doodads that it can do. And then you start using them and you get really comfortable and familiar with these great appliances and they do some wonderful stuff. Y'all do wonderful stuff together. And then one day you hear a crazy little ping or a groan and you're like, oh no, and the descent starts to happen where I'm gonna have to replace this pretty soon. And so everything has these up and down ebbs and flows, and to try to ignore that they exist is doing yourself a disservice. And so don't run from them, embrace them. So like I said, in this in this time, punishment time is when you are in the chaotic time, when you're working out to stabilize, working to make sense of the newness of your life. And you're being forced to do it because there's just no other way to do it. Understand that this mindfulness will help you because you have a new uh, bandwidth of vision and sensory inputs that you can receive and understand. So it's a good thing. And then the retrospectiveness of it. That means that you're now able to have increased perspectives, meaning that you can see stuff from different angles that you were never able to see. Think of it as the difference from going from um 3G to the clarity of high definition, HD, HD. That perspective is so good. And it's so good because it comes through hindsight and growth under pressure. When you go through something, it isn't until the day after that you realize how much work you were doing, how much growth you have endured. And that hindsight starts to kick in where you get that backwards clarity where you can see things in a more objective stance because you can possibly get away from it and get a 30,000-foot view of it, and you start to learn some stuff. So do not sleep on the punishment power. So now let's talk about the power side quickly. The power side is that order. That's because when you are in the order section of your cycle, you get a great amount of things achieved. The power side is when you start developing reputation, you start developing influence and power. That's why we call it power. It is where you start standing out from the other people, and a lot of times you become admired for what you have done. I see so many people rushing and trying to hit monetary goals, and they are so ill equipped that I know at this particular time, if they were to get their goals, it would destroy them. It would take them out of here because they do not understand the impact of order and chaos that they are igniting and the fortitude that it takes to go through the punishment and the power side of it. Because with that power side, you got to be real careful with that one because power feeds directly into your ego. And there is nothing sadder than someone who has to go through the chaotic side of destruction with an inflated ego and they are ill equipped to handle that ego. And that brings me to the A part. What I was talking about there, when I was in my first master's program and was getting ready to go into my internships as a therapist, I was going to a hospital and we had to apply and put the places that we possibly wanted to work at in the hospital. And I wanted to be around the cute little babies, so I put labor and delivery and I filled everything out. I did all of the bells and whistles, all the stuff I thought would get me assigned there because there was an opening. And when I got it back, they told me I was going to be in dialysis, emergency room, and oncology. I was like, what in the what? And I made a stink about it. And I remember the supervisor, I demanded a meeting, and the supervisor was like, I put you there because you haven't cycled yet. And I'm young, so I had no concept or context of what he was talking about. But Scott, wherever you are, I want to thank you. And he told me, he said, I usually won't even work with anybody who hasn't cycled yet because you know nothing. All you know is success. You have not lived through the chaos. You have not lived through the power. He says everybody is so busy worried about being punished in their life that they don't realize it's the power that can kill you. And he says, I would prefer there be somebody who has gone through some things. He says, you've never experienced death in your immediate family, because we had to fill out all of these different things. And I was shook because he was right. But it wasn't until after I realized the gift that had been given to me that I shut up and I gladly took it. And I'll tell you, it was hard working with those people. And it was the families that got me because we had renal failure and we had AIDS patients and all of these different people coming through. And the death was real. But these people had an insight and a perspective that I have yet to experience again. And so I want to say this part, and that is that you must understand that if you would achieve anything of greatness in your life, you're going to go through a cycle. You're going to go through some things. You're going to go on a journey. You're going to have a quest. Oh, yes. It's not just in the books, it's not just pretty little stories that we love. You're going to have to face the byproduct of chaos, which is order, which can trick you. And you're going to have to understand power. Because if you are not ready for it, you will cause more damage than anything else trying to live in a cycle that you're not aware of. And like I said, I wanted to give a shout out to Scott for accepting me into the program because it was an elite program. And it made me have a understanding for being grateful for how when we want something in our lives, the answer or the granting of it usually does not look like what we expect it to look like. But because of going through oncology and having to deal with death and dying, because having to deal with things that made me uncomfortable, I learned how to hold a space for others, how to know when to try to be useful and do something, and when to just be present and tuned in to be able to sit under the pressure of what someone is going with them and not just leave them. And that is something that a lot of people, I would venture to say a lot of people need it, but I could probably tell they've been avoiding it all their life because they're just not good at it and they should be good at it by now. But anyway, that's another podcast. So let me get back on this. Have you cycled yet? So now I'm getting to that point where I'm asking you, have you cycled yet? And the reason why I say that is because the most elite, and when I say elite, I'm not talking about just people with money. Oh, no. I'm talking about those elite people who live on a higher vibration and frequency, who tend to have this inherent power that's so palpable that when you're in their presence, you know, and there is no denying it. You see, most of the elite are very, very familiar with cycles, and they understand that they come all the time. Yeah, it's not where you cycle and then you're done. No, I know upper level, higher tiered coaches who will not work with you if you have not cycled at least twice. And when they say cycle, they're like, I want to see some bankruptcies. I want to see some lawsuits filed against you because they want people who pressed forward in the time of order and did and dared to do great things. And they want to see how you handle it when the great things go under the inspection and the application of chaos. How do you deal with losing your homes and unexpected issues in your life? They want to see that. There was this old pastor when I was growing up was preaching in the black church, and he used to say this all the time. He used to say, I don't care how high you jump when you shout, meaning to be joyful with a message. He says, I want to see how straight you walk when you come down. And that always sat with me because it is part of this thing. So when you ask yourself, because I do want you to ask yourself, have you cycled yet? And if you can say you have, go back and learn from how you handled the end part of that cycle when everything went to hell in a handbasket. And you might be saying, well, Michelle, how are you sure that it's always a defeat or a failure or a loss? Because chaos is the land of growth and newness, but it's also the land of destruction and death and transformation. That's why they call death passing and transformation and transitioning, because this is where you have your newness. If you haven't had it yet and you say, oh, I've never had that, I hate to say it, but if you are listening to this type of podcast and others, and you've got an inkling and an itch to do more, you are setting yourself for a guaranteed cycle to start, because that is the way that we work through going from frequency to frequency and from vibration to vibration, or as people call it, from glory to glory and strength to strength. And so let me just, finish this up by saying this, that if you have never experienced success, that's fine. It's okay. Continue to work, because if you be diligent and consistent, you will have success. But understand this, that success is always married to, coupled with, or the other side of failure. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, failure is the tuition you pay for success. So be grateful for that. And those that haven't yet had this cycle happen or paid attention to it, uh, they don't understand that these cycles are the tests, the final exams that you need to be able to go to a new experience, to a new level, to a new place, because you have to have these. And I say that with fear and trembling, because most people will push back with me saying you have to have that. So I guess I'll amend it and I'll say it's it's probable that you'll have these when you move to a new level, because the weather in that new level requires more. It requires more ability to handle the isolation, more ability to handle what it takes to survive on that level, and understanding that a lot of times there will be um, alienation, solitary commitment, not confinement, commitment that it will require of you to do what you need to, because not everybody will ascend to those levels. And so if you can't handle it down here with everybody else and suffer through, you definitely can't handle it above. And life is doing you a merciful service by not allowing you to go further. So if you understand this, I want to give you some practical things to be mindful of. You see how we use that word again, mindfulness, to open up your self awareness so that you can start to embrace and appreciate what you're going through. So, if you feel like life is kicking you in the gut and stamping you on the foot and knocking you in the head every day, you might be in a cycle. If you can see that you're on the cusp of having some success, count it all joy, rejoice, be happy, and do not dread that what goes up must come down. Go back and listen to my Embracing Chaos podcast, where I talk about how you can mitigate that fall by developing an S curve approach. And I'll give you the 10-second explanation. It just simply means when you start seeing your success, you want to start immediately starting on the next wave of what you're working on, because what that will do is that will give you a buffer for when the success starts to wane. For that, you're already positioning yourself to be on the cusp of having the next thing you're doing peak. And so a lot of people, when they talk about riding the waves, that's what they're talking about. They're called S curve jumps. Okay. So, but getting back to this is a perfecting work. Because going through a cycle is like uh, a refiner's fire. When you put those metals, if you ever watch metal workers of gold and other things, and they're trying to get the impurities out, they have to heat those things up in these intense fires. And as they heat them up and beat them, those impurities start coming out of the blade, out of the work, and they become purified. And so this is called the perfecting work. And the perfecting work is also, guess what? The cycle. Mhm. So when you're trying to get to a point where you're polished, where you are in the upper echelon, the elites, when you're trying to ascribe to do the best that you can and continue to push yourself to be better and better, you are going into the perfecting work. You're going into the cycle so that you can come out with understanding the things that are going to be needed for your next level, where you are gathering in the mindfulness, the retrospectives, and understanding how to deal with loss of the previous life and all of those different things. And I'm going to say this about the perfecting work before we close down, that it pulls out, extracts out weaknesses and impurities and volatile um, vulnerabilities so that you won't be setting yourself up for a bigger fall when you go to the next level. Because life is I give life a bad rap sometimes. But for the most part, life is trying to help you to be better. It's not trying to kill you. It's trying to help you be better. And it's a cruelty to allow you to just keep going higher and higher and higher, knowing that if you even had a stumble, that you're out of here, because the heights that you've gotten to without some failures would kill you if you ever made a misstep, because that's life. In this life, you're going to have trouble. So you might as well embrace the cycle instead of always only wanting to win, only wanting to succeed. It'll kill you faster than anything, because that fall is treacherous and it is certain death if you do not schedule or be thankful for those times when chaos comes in and does her merciful part to help us to be able to adjust and be ready for the next level. So I just wanted you to know that it's okay. And I want to ask you again, have you cycled yet? And if you haven't, get ready and be aware that it's right around the corner if you're ready for it. And now that you have this wisdom, put it to good use and know that it'll take you through your cycle and you'll be able to live to tell about it. So guess what, y'all? Yes, my time is up. I thank you for yours. This has been MichelleSpiva, your practical priestess of wisdom, with another podcast of Wisdom Smack. Mwah. Don't forget to check the show notes, like, share, comment, send me feedback if there are some topics that you'd like for me to cover. And I thank you so much for your continued support, and I'm going to see you tomorrow. Bye. And that's going to do it for today's podcast of Wisdom Smack with MichelleSpiva. If you like this podcast, please help us get the word out. Like, comment, subscribe, and even share. And if you really like it, please help us continue to get the word out by considering using this show's link for Amazon. So when you want to go to Amazon and you do all of your general shopping, please use michellespivacom/AMZ. It's simple as that. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and this show might receive a little bit of commission that will go towards helping to further get these episodes out to you and to others. So thank you so much for listening. This has been MichelleSpiva with Wisdom Smack. Bye.